Hello there, my green skins. Don't mind the little squeaking. Dark has a kitten, so he's going to be dealing with a needy little girl. Yes, girl cat or male cat?
I don't know. I didn't really check.
Okay, so he doesn't know yet. So my thing about having baby kittens is putting them in a shaker and adding to your spaghetti sauce. But that's just me. That's just the orc way of working. So today we have a special guest with us today. We have Kaiser, a Twitch streamer who's here as well. And yeah, so let's break this down. What are we talking about today, boys? Are we talking about Death Race 2000? Yes. So Dark, what did you think of Death Race 2000?
Okay, I have to admit that when you brought it up the first time and you said Stallone was in it and it's a racing movie, I, in my mind, I was thinking of the movie Driven. So I went into this expecting a totally different movie because I had not seen Driven.
Uh that's an interesting Sty Stallone movie. We might have to get to that later. Ex Kaiser, what's your thought process on a little? Let's break it down a little bit. How you feel about the Death Race 2000?
Hang on. Well, to start, I am a big fan of the B movie genre, mostly because it's not a lot of appreciation for it nowadays, especially since you get the idea.
Yeah. Can I ask a
The,
question though, Ex Kaiser? When you say B movie, I would call this a grindhouse movie. This is up there with the Char with the not the Charlie Sheen, but the Sean Connery old grindhouse stuff that existed because this had a budget.
me
B
to
movie.
explain.
Okay, go for it.
The reason I call it B movie is because if you actually look at the credits, it is produced by the king of Hollywood B movies in the 1970s, 80s, and onward, Roger freaking Corman.
You got a point there.
And so, in my book, it is considered a B movie, even if it is a grindhouse movie. I actually like the story set in a neo dystopian totalitarianistic America,
Hmm.
a transcontinental road race where people literally score by running over civilians.
Yeah,
Okay.
And
yeah,
here's the best part.
dystopia. Yeah, this to me, I was thinking I was watching. This movie is set in the year 2000, but for some reason it looks like the 70s as it was imagined by the 60s.
Yeah, it had that vibe, didn't it? And that's something that we kind of extend into. So, all right, we're gonna break her down because you're getting into the story, sir. We'll move into story next, coming up after we get to the other stuff. What did you guys think about the music? We'll start with Kaiser, and then we'll move to Dark, and then I'll polish her off.
Music was decent for a movie of this caliber.
Mm.
There was music.
I give it, yeah, constant. Uh, constant symphonic with a lot of jazz theming and
Mhm.
saxophone.
Yeah, it didn't
Yeah,
stick with me, so it um so for me at least the music is I guess it's just atmospheric generic at best.
yeah. And well, for me, it fits the mood of what they were going for. This is very similar to the Omega Man and other movies like this, where in that era, like Logan's Run, stuff like that, the music really isn't about it, and a lot of times the music is left dead. If you've ever seen Logan's Run, there's quite a few moments where there's actually no music at all, and that's kind of how they did this. They let stuff hang. It's very traditional of that era. I would say where we watched the Warriors before had an amazing soundtrack. This one has a little lackluster, maybe even a little soundtrack.
It's hard to rate it the same way because, as you guys have pointed out, it's a B movie. It's a bit of a low budget by
B.
Hollywood standards.
Well, no, actually, this had some money to it, if I remember correctly. Like there was
No,
like
no,
those.
B movies.
Yeah, I would say yeah. That's why I call this more of a grindhouse uh, because of the fact that this is one of those movies that are like those cult movies that was made for the violence and the uber, the ultraviolet. And B movies do it too, but B movies have no fucking budget.
Yeah, even this
So
movie, even if it does have a budget of sorts, it was still restricted. I mean, the kills, gotta be honest, were not very
yeah, but this was also
creative.
made in also in the '70s. So that in its own right, even though this was late '70s, it's still made in an era where that wasn't that good. And let's talk. Speaking about kills, let's talk about the little kills here. What did you guys think of the effects as a whole, and just kind of how everything looked? We'll go with Kaiser first. Go ahead, Kaiser.
Geez, I was actually looking at the difference between B movies and grindhouse exploitation, but the effect,
Hmm.
a lot of pyrotechnics was used in this movie, but most of this stuff, very practical.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of practical effects because if you look at modern movies with all that CGI special effects,
Hmm.
it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I
I
think we can
like
all
the
agree on that. Practical is
yeah,
Yeah.
the best.
yeah. Granted, there are some special effects you can't pull off without using computer graphics designs, but that's just how it is.
Hmm. And that is kind of how it is, eh? Go ahead, Dark. You want to go next?
In terms of effects, and that includes the techniques used in the racing. I mean, there were some standard techniques in those days, like speeding up the footage, and when you look, if there's people in the footage, it's more obvious. So that does
Oh
take care
yeah,
of it.
oh yeah. There was a lot of that.
But I'm not hating on the movie for that. I mean, that was common in those days, even for
Yeah.
big budget Hollywood
Well, you
blockbuster
saw,
films.
yeah, you see it a lot in martial art movies where the guys are moving like fucking lightning fast for a split second. It's because they did that, and that was of that era. It was the most funniest one was the worst offender of that was that speed up moment when Sylvester Stallone's chasing after the guy in the water. When
Yeah.
you see that, it's like, how the fuck is that car not catching up? And you watch his legs; he goes into high speed,
Yeah, it was fast
Yeah.
racing.
and
But outside of
yeah,
that, this movie surprisingly had some, uh, with a couple of exceptions. I don't know if there was some good blue screen effects or if they were actually driving in the close-up shots.
yeah, they had some
Many of them were
amazing.
doing chase cams.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of face cams, and there was a lot of driving. And Sylvester Stallone did drive. I know that. So did David Carradine, and everybody else that was a part of it was actually legit driving those vehicles. They did have scenes where I only remember a couple times where they had scenes where it wasn't David Carradine; it was someone else driving. But a majority of it was him, if I remember correctly. I vaguely remember that. Yeah, he did because there's quite a few times he did that. And Corman was notorious for throwing actors into danger. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did. It's one of Corman's quite well known for that.
Just look at Galaxy of Terror.
Exactly. Yeah, he was known for throwing his actors into trouble. It wasn't as bad as them actually firing bullets at people because that was back in the 50s. They actually did fire live rounds at people, like next to people, which is like if you think about that, that's holy fuck. Like society isn't like that anymore. But yeah, we had some real fun for that. So, what did you guys think of the acting as a whole?
Oh God, it was hokey,
Okay,
and I mean, I guess the main guy, I forget his name, and Stallone were the only ones putting in
Frankenstein.
Yeah, Frankenstein.
David
Well, I was talking.
Carradine. Yeah.
I wanted to name it the actor, but him and Stallone were
Mhm.
probably the only ones really trying, but everybody else was just foaming it in. Especially that lady,
Well,
that dear friend of mine, lady.
oh no, that was great. That was actually awesome. Every time she said that, that was pretty good. What about you, Kaiser? What'd you think of it?
It actually was a little slightly above par for a Hollywood B movie slash exploitation movie, which basically are the same thing. I had to look it up,
Hmm.
but it was still very cheesy. But it
Hmm.
felt like you could tell that the minds were starting to be affected by the events that were happening.
Hmm.
Frankenstein was actively not just the tutor antagonist, he was actually a protagonist with antagonistic values
Hmm.
behind his motives. Sylvester Stallone's Machine Gun Turbo was
Hmm.
actively a hateful man who basically wanted to go after Frankenstein because he felt cheated.
Hmm.
The rest of the cast, the only other character I liked was Calamity Jane, and she was actually kind of fun.
I
But
liked all. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
by the end of the story, by the end of her part of the story, she had actually become almost self-aware of what was happening to them.
Mhm.
They had been marked.
Yeah. And to me, I think the acting in this was perfect for what it was, down to the anchors, because that whole dear friend of mine, that is legit something that was happening in the and that was I believe a British, one of those British people that did that. She's going, a dear friend of mine, a dear friend of mine. So that all that was legit. Calamity Jane was good, was really good, and I can't. I'm certain I vaguely remember her being a Playboy bunny, but I'm not sure. I think most of the women in this were Playboy bunnies, but they were good act. They did do some decent acting. Now, is it saying there wasn't completely another hokey parts? Yo, fuck yeah. Now, the worst case to this was, well, sorry, the best actors were obviously Sylvester Stallone and David Carradine. These are both guys that were, Sylvester Stallone was building himself up, and he was getting himself to being known as a good actor,
Yeah,
and
that's another thing about Stallone. I mean, this film is outside his usual um, style. You know, he's typecast as the tough macho guy, but this time he's like he talks tough, but when faced with Frankenstein, he starts to cower.
oh, also it's David Carradine. This is a guy. This is a guy that was like a fucking multiple martial artist at that point. Like this is a guy you don't want to pick a fight with. Like David Carradine in it. That was David Carradine in his prime, and him in his prime was probably I wouldn't want to pick a like he looks like a string bean, but I don't think I want to pick a fight with that man in his prime. He's really, 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 really good martial artist. I didn't know how good he was. Like, I didn't realize who he was until way later in life. Like, when I first saw this movie, it was like, oh yeah, I don't, how's Sylvester Stallone? Like, the guy's got a frame on him like a fucking, like a Mack truck. Like, he still had a big frame even back then. Like this is before he bulked up for Sylvester, the Rocky movies, and then like he reached his peak bulkiness and over the top. I think that's like when he was at his most peculiar. Like he was big for Demolition Man, but him and over the top was him like built. Like his arms were huge for that movie. So yeah, it's pretty good. What did you think about the whole David Carradine fight there, Kaiser?
Sequence
Yeah,
actually
the whole.
well choreographed,
Yeah, it was right.
expertly so.
Hmm. So
Uh,
now we're
I
gonna
can't comment
go
on
ahead.
the choreography, but the way it was cut, I think they could have done with a few less jump cuts.
Yeah, I guess that is true, but it was still good, decent fight. I would say let's break it down to the story, and then we'll go to the ratings, boys. Okay, so what do you guys think of the story? We'll start with Dark this time, then go Kaiser, then I'll finish her off, and then we'll get to the ratings.
I think the story is really interesting. I like the whole premise, and it's just the execution. Like, if it was a bigger movie, it certainly would have
Mhm.
been better, provided it's not made nowadays. But that's a different subject.
Well, they did make it nowadays. There is a Death
Oh
Race
yeah, oh
2000s.
yeah, there was a remake
Sorry,
with
Jason
Jason.
Whoa,
Statham.
yeah, okay, yeah, which is awful. Go ahead. Sorry.
But the idea is interesting, and to see these actors try to take it seriously, um, I guess some bigger names could have done. I don't know how to say this without sounding harsh towards the movie, but I guess you could say the execution could have used some more polishing.
Well, yeah, I guess star power, but that star power, you kind of want a little more star power. But as a whole, what did you think of the story?
I think it's very simple.
Grindhouse, yeah.
It's very simple, and I think um, that's all I can say. It's just interesting. It's fun. The idea is fun, uh, but the twist at the end is what made it all worth it. I mean, you go through it and you think, oh, it's just going to be a when you think Frankenstein is just a hateful guy, a guy you gotta hate, but there's a weird twist at the end which makes you go, wow, this was all worth it.
Hmm. So, what did you think, Kaiser, about the story?
She liked it.
Hmm.
First off, like I said, dystopian actually future in which America has gone fully totalitarian and taken over the world,
Mhm.
ruled by pretty much a president for life who created the transcontinental road race to satisfy his citizens' love of violence and cars. And to top it all off, he created the Frankenstein persona in order to give people a champion, someone they love to root for, which in this case, in this particular story, was played by David Carradine, who, if you remember the premise of that whole movie, was he was actually trained to do this.
Mhm.
But for some strange reason, he was gunning for the top spot because only the winner of the road race gets to stand upon the uh, pedestal with the president and shake his hand,
Mhm.
revealing in which he actually revealed why a hand grenade.
Would
Yeah.
you
Oh God, the
say
hand grenade.
would you say this movie inspired The Purge?
Oh fuck yeah.
I wouldn't know. I've never watched The Purge.
Basically, The
I would
Purge
say, oh
is
fuck yeah.
well, the premise of The Purge is for one night a year, all all crimes are legal, so as to keep people's violent tendencies in check for that one day.
Hmm.
It's a Michael Bay
I'm
movie, so I'd never watch it,
good answer.
but the idea is they
Oh
want
fuck
people
yeah.
to do something not lust. Well,
Well,
count
this
punishable for a
idea
night.
this idea isn't new. Like the idea of like people fighting gladiatorial battles. They're fuck this shit. This shit in this. It's usually met in a dystopia. The purge where the purge was different, where they got rid of the dystopia, and they kind of just created a pseudo utopia. So it's like for that entire time of year, it's a utopia. But for the rest of the time, it's a dystopia. It's absolutely kind of silly. Like I said, the idea of the purge just doesn't make any sense because what's stopping someone from, say, a majority of people wouldn't be out killing each other; they'd be out getting fucking high. Oh, one day a year I can, get high. One day a year I can kidnap. One day a year I could rob a bank and get away with it. It's a stupid. It was kind of a dumb premise. This, however, at least has a premise that makes sense. These are drivers. People make a decision to do what they're going to do, and
It's all
it's
scaled down to a race, so there's still a level of
yeah,
rules and
yeah. The
order,
rest of the world,
but the
yeah,
purge
yeah,
has
and
none of that.
and yeah, there's none. It's a broken the last movie I saw most of it because I have a friend who's a horror fan, and anything that's considered horror he collects, and that includes this movie, which was surprising to me that this was considered a horror movie. Uh in some genres, this story as a whole is interesting because it's equally stupid. It's equally about cult. Like the whole idea of it is euthanasia. The whole idea of it is that idea for and in that era, euthanasia was a thing. Calling the population was a thing, and that was a fear back in the day. That was an honest kind of thought process of, oh, we're becoming overpopulated. Oh, like the idea of some of the stuff, and the idea of Frankenstein was Frankenstein being pissed off. Like as a whole, he didn't like the fact that you get a vibe there was more to the story, but he didn't like the fact that he was basically a tool for basically a government that he didn't agree with. And it's funny how it ends. Like I'll reveal a little bit, boys, if some people kind of but I would say it was kind of funny how it kind of had a little bit of the end was like, yeah, no, what's the first thing he does? Abolish. The first thing he does is basically have a rebel take control of the peace ministry, which is hysterical because legitimately she's like, oh yeah, now that I'm in charge, yeah, no rebellion now. I'm like, well, whoa, wait a minute. So only rebellion when ye, not for D, which is kind of funny that they did that. Then they had the whole abolish this and put this up and abolish that, and the movie ends off with a guy basically monologuing about violence and all this other type of stuff. And, people use this for this. It's like, Jesus fuck, it's just kind of funny how they did that. And I love the idea that they created a champion that was so popular, even when he murdered the president, he became the next president. That's how popular he was. You keep what you kill, mentality, which is really quite funny. And yeah, overall, great movie. I love the matte paintings. The matte paintings added so much to this movie. The only problem I had with it was a little disjarring because they'd have a matte painting of this like utopia, and then they would never, and then they're driving around local streets 90% of the time. So it's like, well, we lost, having that there, when you have this beautiful matte paintings, all this crazy like art, and then it steps into this stuff, kind of takes you out of it. But overall, decent. Like it's stupid, but it's functional and it's fun, which is exactly why I do these reviews, is to show people awesome, stupid, functional, fun movies. All right, boys. So let's do a rating. Now, this is a rating from 1 to 10. For those who don't know, 1 being garbage, 10 being amazing. So you can do like 7.5, 3. You could you can build up from the numbers, and there's 10 for each number. All right. So, Dark, what's your rating?
I will give it 6 boobs out of 10.
6 boobs out of 10. Okay. X Kaiser, what are you going to give it? Kaiser, what are you going to give it, sir?
Honestly, I give it about a 7 out of 10. Just how good this movie is. Though there's one point that I did have a little problem with. You know the starting scene where they're about to start, and all of a sudden you see this green little line pass through.
Yeah, I forgot all. I actually no. Wait, I have the brand new revision one, the one that actually finished that off. We don't see that. I don't see that green line. Um, My rating on this is about a 6.5. It it's a guilt. I would even go the point 0.5 is to add to that guilty pleasure because I will watch this movie every once in a while. It's one of those movies I do occasionally watch for shits and giggles. It's one of those cult movies I like to have fun kind of watching. So yeah, that is our review of Death Race 2000. What's coming up next is me and Dark have talked about it. Kaiser, you're welcome to join us for another rating. We will be doing. We're going to be doing a little bit of John Candy month, starting with Uncle Buck.
Oh God!
And we're going to be doing Uncle Buck, Canadian Bacon. I believe what's after Canadian Bacon. I'm not sure what we're doing after Canadian Bacon, but I know the Great Outdoors is in there somewhere. And Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. This is going to be our John Candy month. So we'll be doing to pride my Canadian John, to pride the love of John Candy, and a great comedian. I think died way too early. So yeah, that's going to be our review. Ex Kaiser, if you want to give yourself your Twitch there, Kaiser, you can.
You can find me at Kaiser Solarborn on Twitch, Elderweird101 on Twitter, and please, if you see a link to the forge, please join. I do games every week if I can. This week I'm actually not going to be able to because of certain situations that have come up.
Okay.
Plus, I'm actually trying out Star Citizen this week, so.
Okay. Boom.
It's
So,
great.
yeah. So, Dark, where can they find you?
They can find me in the links below.
Yeah, if I remember to put the links, there's a lot of few times I forget, or I'm an absent-minded person when it comes to that when I upload these. Well, you know where you can find me. Please like, subscribe. Hopefully, we'll have more guests as time goes on. Hopefully, we'll have more people to talk about and debate the movies that we watch. And yeah, so thank you everybody, and have yourself a very good day.